Greg Sankey took the podium, as he always does, to start off SEC Media Days. He had a lot of massive statements, some about the college football playoff, and also taking some shots at other conferences and commissioners. Joe, in reference to the playoff, in reference to the 8 or 9 game conference schedule for the SEC, your thoughts on some of the things that Greg Sankey had to say today at SEC Media Days?
Yeah, I'm incredibly nauseated by this nonsense statement that Sankey put out there. He talked about how he's in constant communication with all of the conference commissioners, trying to put out this image that he's the facilitator of the discussions that are happening with the college football playoff, which is fine. And I'm glad that he pointed out that he's talking like every single day with these guys, to Petiti, and also he brought up with Jim Phillips with the ACC. Yes. He referenced how he talked to him 3 out of the last 5 days of the week. But the statement that pissed me off is he just so snidely put in here, we have a 12-team playoff, 5 conference champions. That can stay if we can't agree. And he knows to the degree what he's talking about here, that the SEC and the Big Ten have controlling power of the decision-making. That is such a, well, if we can't get along, then we're just going to stick with the previous model. If we can't get to the same page here, we're just going to make it so that we don't make any progress. That pissed me off. I don't know if it pissed you off or not.
Why?
Because we're going through all of this. He clearly doesn't want a 12-team playoff. We're going through all these conversations of expanding to 16, and now all of a sudden he's trying to put his foot down and to play the whole we won't go anywhere because I say so. Or it's kind of like your dad saying to you, I will turn this car around because I can, type of a comment. I don't support it. I think that this is a total nonsense thing to have thrown in there.
See, it's interesting you brought that up. I didn't see it like that. The way that I understood his statements were, he does not want to go to the AQ model, right? Because of the reason that he said, and just to paraphrase what you just brought up, we can do the 5 conference champions and then go from there and stay at 12. I think what he was really saying to me, and I could be wrong here, is that the debate going into SEC Media Days really had been, in reference to the college football playoff, was about the AQ model versus the 5+11 model. Now, maybe I'm wrong, but if there is one thing that I agree with him on, and let me tell you why I thought it was about the 5+11 model in reference to the college football playoff, because right after he brought up the 8 conference games, and then he talked about every year in the college football playoff of the teams being in the playoff from the SEC having the strongest strength of record. He turns around and says, and also the toughest strength of schedule. What I think that he was saying there was to Tony Petiti, because the third comment in that situation was him saying that I've met with Tony Petiti 4 out of the last 5 days last week. I think it's about them not seeing eye to eye on the AQ model versus the 5+11. Now, I'm just assuming that. I don't know exactly what he means there, and you could be right on that. Assuming that he means the 5+11 model, of all the things that he said today, it's the one thing I agree with him on. The one thing that I do agree on is that I don't agree with the AQ model. We've had this discussion before.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So if it is that specifically, I'm with him there. And listen, I had a 2.5 hour long show last week with my good buddy Carter Bryant, and we discussed going into SEC Media Days, 8 versus 9 conference games. Joe, we've pulled up Nebraska's schedule. We've pulled up some of these schedules when we've done deep dives. We've seen Shane Beamer run out there today and say, listen, we can go to 9 conference games. I got Clemson at the end of the year, and now you're telling me I'm supposed to be playing a Big Ten team in the beginning of the year. With all due respect, that's 10 conference games when some of you are just going to be playing 9. Now, if we're about equality and equal performances around the conference, basically I thought today was them making a statement to the Big Ten, we're not going to AQ model. We're not going to do it. And what we're not going to do either is we're not going to bow down because you think the AQ model gets more teams in for you, when historically it would mean more teams for us. I feel like they're in a standoff. And I don't think that Greg Sankey, as much as I've criticized him in the past, on this show a lot, Joe, why would he give up the 5+11 model if it benefits his conference more? I don't understand why people are on him with that. Now, for me, I wish it would be all at large for me. Yeah. But I don't get what I want. If we are going to do a model, and I understand guys like Josh Pate, who we respect very dearly, who doesn't agree with this model. He wants to be the 4 AQ mod, 444 AQ model, 44221, whatever it is model. Joe, you can't do that. If you want to cripple a sport, do AQs. Do that many automatic qualifiers. Because, Joe, then they want to do in playing games. They want to do all these different things. Okay, what happened last year? And listen, Shane Beamer said it best today. Hey, bud, what did it matter at the end when we beat Clemson? He goes, he says today at SEC Media Days, it meant nothing other than that's our biggest rival and we love beating them. Joe, it meant nothing. So you go out there and you do AQs, fine. But those games mean nothing at the end. Now, let me just say this before you go back into there. You could be right. I do think that there is a little bit of a stance here where he's saying, na boo boo, you need my vote too. Now, two things can be true. But to me, I felt like the more pressing thing before the Big Ten goes next week is him saying, brother, if you want to do this, let's go play this shit. Because that's what he keeps saying over and over again.
So to add in here, I have come around and I agree with you that I think that the 5-11 model is best for the expanded 16-team playoff. I absolutely do. And I think that Beamer's comment talking about scheduling and the references that Sankey brought up to talking about the 9-team schedule, all those things, yeah, I tend to agree that the SEC has a much harder typical schedule in conference, albeit the Big Ten in particular tends to challenge themselves outside of conference more. They're not the same though. But I still look at what Sankey said, regardless of the model that is being referred to and me agreeing with the model that he wants to institute. I feel uncomfortable with the very casual reference of an abuse of power in this situation. And I know that you're maybe reading it a little bit differently. And I was reading Pat Forty had a column on this, and the way that he framed it, I really agreed with. It really felt like Sankey was saying, I'm just going to take my ball and go home. And that has been his approach since they have got the controlling power in the decision-making for what they're doing with the playoff. I don't like that. I really don't like that. This is supposed to be something that shapes the sport. And why is one guy being a dickhead and saying, if we can't agree, then we're just going to stick with 12?
Let me tell you why. Because, again, if they have controlling power and the Big Ten, and by the way, Brett Yermark, who we talked about last week, walking back his statements and now basically saying he wants to automatic qualifiers. Joe, why? Let me just ask, why in the good wide world would the SEC go to the AQ model? Why?
It doesn't make sense for them.
It doesn't make sense for them. And to be honest with you, Joe, here's what you need to do then. Go out there and schedule SEC teams then. Go out there and schedule, like, for example.
Whoa, wait. But you're saying, though, that the SEC won't schedule these opponents, though, so that you can't say that they should go out and schedule.
No. Shane Beamer said if you move to 9 conference games in the SEC and then I have to play Clemson, and then at the beginning of the season you're telling me to play a Big Ten team, it's not equal inside the conference.
Okay,
I get what he's saying.
But separate from that, though, I mean, generally, you're supporting that the SEC should not add another conference game,
yes,
but should schedule the Big Ten opponent.
Let me tell you why. Who's Nebraska play out of conference?
I don't know, actually.
They don't. Go.
Wait.
It's Dookie Water State and Dookie Water Tech.
I think they play Cincinnati. Oh, Cincinnati is the team that they play.
Dookie Water Tech comes into town.
Houston Christian.
Okay. So you're talking about all this stuff with the SEC and the games that they're being played. Joe, Texas is going up to Ohio State. LSU's going out to Clemson. Alabama went to Wisconsin, and now Wisconsin comes back, and they got Florida State. So don't tell me that the SEC is not going out there and playing teams in the beginning. You're mad about a game at the end of the year. Well, Nebraska's got those games in the beginning of the year. What are you complaining about? I mean, Joe, Indiana didn't beat a team above 500, but won in Michigan. They didn't. And and the SEC and Greg Sankey is supposed to come out here and say, wait a minute, man. Like, if you formulate strength of schedule and strength of record, it doesn't equal the same. Because, Joe, at the end of the day, it doesn't. I agree with him on one thing. The one thing that I agree with him on is and you've said this to yourself too, when the Big Ten, some of the bigger teams do this, it's not the Ohio States of the world. It's not the Penn States or Oregons of the world. And quite honestly, some of them that are in the middle of the pack, it's not necessarily always them. I thought Lane said it the best today. Hey, we got top-heavy teams just like you have top-heavy teams. Please tell me when I'm going into Wake Forest, the only team that will schedule us, and then they cancel it the next season, and I'm sitting here, we're going out of conference. The Big Ten's going to have to show that some of these other teams at the bottom will go out there and play too.
Okay. Again, I don't disagree with you on the scheduling stuff. I feel like we're slightly kind of having two different conversations here at the same time. Do you think, though, him making that statement and that's like, if it was in the light that I'm reading into this, and I'm not the only person who read into it this way, do you think that this is a problem that he specifically is kind of trying to throw around the big hammer?
No. You know why? Next Monday, Tony Petitti is going to run out there with that same hammer, and he's going to come down with it.
But Petitti's not like that. How many quotes? Wait. How many times do we have videos of Petitti like delivering really impactful quotes?
Last week, he went on a podcast saying that he's going to stand his ground on AQ models. Please go look at it on Twitter.
That's like the first time. Wait, what podcast was this?
I forget. Go look at it though.
But he doesn't do this stuff often. Like he's not like Sankey.
The last two statements that we have from Sankey that are public are SEC media days today and in Destin for spring meetings.
Yeah, but we all know that he has multiple mouthpieces that put out messages for him across the entire media landscape. Petitti doesn't have a single person who does that for him.
But Joe, he's got the same equal stick. They both have equal sticks here.
But he hasn't made a public statement that he is going.
Joe, they made a public statement in reference to wanting to do AQs.
I don't know. I think that this is a far more passive aggressive way of handling it compared to what Sankey is the only commissioner that would make a passive aggressive statement like this. And this is why I have a problem with it. I don't have a problem with the model that he's trying to build. I have a problem with him just very kind of passively trying to point out, like, I'm the one who controls the decision making here. And it's not the ACC and the Big 12.
I don't read into that like that. I think he's defending his conference, which is his right to do.
He obviously has the right to do that.
But you have a fine line that you got to operate under. The fine line is how do I protect my conference and do exactly what they want to do versus what's not best for the conference.
But, okay, this is what the problem is, though, now, is that him and Petitti being given control of the decision-making for the college football playoff was not to do what was best solely for the SEC and the Big Ten. It was to make decisions that were the best for college football. They were given. I know that they're not. And that's why I'm saying that I have an issue with what is a clear statement of an abuse of power, that you're right. He is trying to defend his conference, but that is not what he is supposed to be doing. This is why ultimately we need an actual steward to represent college football.
And I can make that same statement for Tony Petitti fighting for AQs, regardless if he's out there with a mouthpiece.
But he's never said anything like this. He's never said anything like this before.
He's literally come out, yes, he has, and said that he wants the AQ model.
But he didn't say that he would shut down the expansion and he would revert it back to 12.
Hold on.
When has he ever said that? He's never said that.
No, but here's the problem with that. Why? We don't want more expansion anyway.
Forget what we want. The conferences want more expansion because it means more money. Sankey saying this says, you guys can't get along and agree and you guys won't do what I say, then I'm shutting this thing down and nobody gets more money. That is what my the read is on this.
Joe, I get what you're saying. I don't agree with the abuse of power when they've won 18 of the last 22 national titles.
Again, that doesn't have anything to do. That doesn't have anything to do
because it affects Joe. If you go to 16 teams, Alabama, Ole Miss, and South Carolina are in the playoff. You cannot sit here and tell me that it doesn't affect them more than it does the Big Ten, because it does affect them more from a financial standpoint.
But playoff decision making isn't supposed to happen like that. We're supposed to come to an agreement that is ultimately best for everybody.
Okay,
like that's the whole point of this.
You're putting
the SEC
him
isn't supposed to be handed all the power. That's my problem.
But you're giving
pointing out that he has it.
You're also putting him in a situation where, with all due respect to the ACC and Big 12, you're giving them spots that they do not deserve. Do they deserve? Let me again. To Shane Beamer's point today, did Clemson going 0-3 against the SEC deserve to be in there over the teams that they lost to?
No.
Okay.
They don't.
How do you fix that?
The at-large model is the way to fix that.
Okay. So then why in the world, when it affects his conference, when literally a year ago, with South Carolina, Bama, and Ole Miss, it literally affected them.
My problem is specifically with the delivery of the message. They can have behind closed doors their conversations about what each conference wants from this, and they can fight back and forth. They can fight publicly, which they've basically been doing. I am reiterating here. I have the problem that his statement is, if you guys don't go with what I want, if I don't get my way, we will stick with the 12-team model. That is what his statement is. That to me is what's the inappropriate part about this. I don't disagree with some of the things that you're saying here. Like, yes, the best model is the at-large model. The SEC would probably have the most teams in. Not disagreeing with any of that. Greg Sankey has a right to do what's best for the SEC, but he had the right to do what was best for the SEC when all four power conferences had had equal say in this. But now he is tasked with representing college football as a whole.
In fairness, the last thing I'll say in this, Tony Petitti wasn't here when all chaos broke out. He wasn't. So the only real commissioner who was here outside of Jim Phillips was Greg Sankey. When COVID hit and all shit went to hell, he was the only leader who, when Kevin Smith and all of them canceled the Big Ten during COVID, they only had, 5 conference games, if I'm not mistaken, in the 2020 year?
It was something like that.
And Greg Sankey said, I'm not going with y'all. We're playing, whether you like it or not. And they played. From COVID on, from NIL to the portal, Joe, why don't they call Tony Petitti at Congress? He's not summoning himself into Congress. You don't summon yourself into Congress. They're not summoning Tony Petitti. It's not just him saying, if you're going to give me this, then I'm going to tell you what I think. He does not subpoena himself. He can't.
I understand that. And I think that he solely understands this. And this is why I keep coming back to it. I don't like him understanding that he has more power than everybody else and abusing it. He's making decisions for just the SEC, and he is not allowing for balanced decision making. Okay, that is where I have problems.
And I ask the question one last time.
Okay.
You can have that statement and it be true and it be fine. It also comes to the fact of, I would ask 2 questions to you. Is the Big Ten not doing the same thing in theory, wanting the AQ model? And then secondly, then how do we come to a solution?
They are fighting for their own version of the playoff that they want, but Tony Petitti is not threatening to shut down playoff expansion in a press conference in a media availability.
What if he runs out there Monday and says the same thing?
Well, then we've created a shitstorm. Sankey's created a shitstorm. And I don't know how to resolve this. I think that you resolve it with less toxic means. That is how I look into it.
Sometimes, look, I thought we were going to get into this too. This is what I'm really over him on. What I'm really over Sankey on is saying and talking about NIL and the portal and then never doing shit about it. If we're being honest, this was the first time that I actually feel like that he has put his foot down. Can you name a time that he has actually put his foot down other than today?
I don't know. My memory of Sankey's
I will tell you the only
actions.
other time that I remember off the top of my head is when he said we were playing during COVID.
I feel like there's more examples that we could come up with if we sat and combed through them, but
I'm sure. I mean, he was a big part of the expansion. If you remember, Kevin Smith left and they got what they wanted then.
Right.
So, look, I get what you're saying. I'm not saying that you're wrong, but it also comes to the fact that it's a fine line of when we got to, and I'm going to say this one last time, when we have to coddle to the ACC and you have a coach out there saying, hey, man, I had to go back literally today. Shane Bieber comes out there and says, I had to go back in the locker room and tell the guys the team that you just beat gets in a playoff over you, and you have the same record. By the way, speaking of abuse of power, my wife holds the key to sex, and I understand abuse of power.
BetOnline remains your top spot for all of your live betting action and contests. NFL, college football, UFC, NHL are all in full swing. BetOnline is your number one source for wagering news, odds, trends, and predictions with both desktop and mobile access at any time. Head to BetOnline today and use promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for 50% off your first deposit. That is a 50% welcome bonus. BetOnline, where the game starts.